Today, I would like to tell you all a story. A story of friendship and adversity, drama and reconciliation, laughter and grief. A story about the time that I wrote an illegible 40-page novella about a guy named Master Fort Fighter. A story about the time that I spent over a year making a feature-length film about a random person that we killed in GTA Online. A story about the time that I listened to a bunch of strangers cry in a VC as they watched Heavy Weapons Guy pass on into the next life. Have you ever taken a look at my second channel, Pork Brain, and wondered, what the fuck am I looking at? Well, this is the story of Warshooter Interactive, the multimedia ARG that my best friend and I dedicated an eighth of our lives to. Everything you're going to see throughout this video, random though it may seem, is the culmination of literally hundreds of hours spent just planning and talking about this stuff with my creative partner. So that's the scale of dedication that we're talking about here. Here's a few samples of this seemingly meaningless madness so that you can get a taste for what Warshooter Interactive is all about. So when I say I made a movie, I wrote a book, etc., that isn't the whole truth. I'm only half of Warshooter. Working in tandem with me all along the way was my friend Groovy Gray. You all might remember him as a member of my Sims 3 home, or one of the veterans on my Discord server, or as my absolute strangest reply guy on Twitter. He's the funniest person I know, and the absolute perfect counterbalance to my own sense of humor. He's the Lennon to my McCartney. When it comes to shitposting, half of my soul will always belong to him. However, I'm getting ahead of myself. When I first met Groovy, he was none of those things to me. He was just another Half-Life fan who happened to join my Discord server and wanted to put together a watch party for the upcoming Half-Life Alyx reveal trailer. This was back when my Discord server was at around 20 users, and I was at about 400 subscribers on YouTube. I said that I was down to join in and watch the HLA trailer with the group, but ultimately everyone else bailed. So when the time came, it was just Groovy and I alone in a VC, getting super emotional about Half-Life and finally seeing City 17 again. While I had thought that he was chill ever since he first joined the Discord, this is when Groovy and I finally became friends. I'd never really been into shitposting before, but a couple months after this, Groovy and I were goofing around in TF2 like always, and we decided to make a dumb meme video. Remove Medic from Team Fortress 2. It was just a stupid video showing a bunch of goofy random crit melee kills and the lesbian strategy where two medics heal each other and stay permanently ubercharged. While this video isn't especially funny, this was my first time ever using my editing skills purely for fun, and I wanted more. Well, Groovy and I both loved Heavy, and so we decided to make Remove Heavy from TF2 next. This one took a bit longer to make, about 4 years to be precise. See, I keep calling this ARG Warshooter Interactive because that's the title that its couple dozen fans are familiar with, but really, this ARG was called Remove Heavy from TF2. See, Groovy and I were always fans of cursed Heavy stuff. He's just a funny character to make post-ironic, uncanny memes about, so when we decided to make Remove Heavy from TF2, we decided that this one should be super cursed and weird, and then we'd make 7 more for the other mercs that are all pretty much just normal, goofy clip compilations. We were gonna just have the two of us as Heavy, dancing on Mercenary Park next to this video of Plankton and Mr. Krabs. Well, when we were filming on this random empty server at 3 AM, somebody named Diamond Destroyer just happened to join us and start tryharding, killing us over and over. That's when everything changed. That's the moment that Groovy and I were reborn. We both said Death Battle in the chat and sync and started trying to kill Diamond Destroyer with nothing but our fists, and that footage became the first ever trailer made by Warshooter Interactive, Death Battle. Here's a few clips. God, I can't believe I'm actually showing this stuff. It's nothing super special, right? Just a goofy game trailer parodying those crappy mobile game ads. We got the company name Warshooter Interactive from a mobile game called Navy Gunner Legend Warshoot. Well, simple though this first video may have been, I think me and Groovy both realized that we had gold on our hands with the Warshooter brand. Over the following year, we'd make a few more Warshooter videos. Construction Heroes, a short film by The Scout. Death Battle 2, Warrior of Darkness defeats the bright day when hope goes missing, only fighter War Zombies and the Golden Legend, Gangster Plane Pain Problem. War Zombies 2, The Ancient Time Doors of Fighting's Past and Future. It was a very busy year for us. War Zombies was always Groovy's thing. He did whatever he wanted with it. Death Battle 2, though, was something of a turning point for my sense of humor in terms of Warshooter. I took Warshooter in a completely different direction than Groovy was ever planning with that one. It no longer felt like a failed attempt at being badass. It felt like a fucking fever dream and a panic attack, if I'm being honest. It's long, it's exhausting, the music is insane, and for the entire second half of the video there's just a news ticker style string of word salad going across the top of the screen while you're supposed to be reading other text. And goddammit, I love it. Groovy had, let's just say, mixed feelings about the changes in style. Really, this video and all of those that followed in its footsteps have caused so many actual arguments between Groovy and I over the years. But I think it's the sharp contrast between our two styles that give Warshooter its insane energy. As for Construction Heroes, it's just too much to get into right now, and that first video wasn't anything too special anyway. Heroes is kind of the backbone to all of Warshooter though, so I'll get more into that later. One relevant fact though is that all of Construction Heroes was inspired by this one comment on a TF2 video that has since been deleted from my channel. 7 years of TF2 didn't go with Cosmos to the void to disappear. It's still here to shine us when darkness of boredness hides everything. 4. It's just TF2 in the community who powers the core with light and fun. Cube, if you're watching this, that comment literally changed me and Groovy's life. It's the reason that Heroes 4 is subtitled Power the Core, and why the entire series ends with a cosmic void. I'm gonna hold on some footage of me here for a minute and just give everyone a breather. I really don't want this video to be me explaining the lore of Warshooter. Groovy and I are already working on that video. It's gonna be about 3 hours long, and hopefully it'll be up on my second channel by the time this thing goes live. Now that we're at the part of the story where Groovy and I are being pretty prolific though, and we've got a decent flow going with Warshooter, let's go over the series that really matter here. Construction Heroes was a series of films by Scout about these two engineers that go around saving the day in Half-Life 2, then Portal, then GTA 5, then all of Time and Space. When I say that we made a feature-length film about a random person that we killed in GTA, Construction Heroes 3 is what I'm talking about. Construction Heroes is also where Warshooter became a straight-up ARG, rather than just a series of shitposts with a little bit of lore behind them. I'll get into that whole mess a bit later. It's solid ending material. Next up, you've got Shopkeeper vs. the Apocalypse. Groovy and I started this series out because I challenged him to make a video in 5 minutes, and then after he did, I basically stole the Shopkeeper IP from him, and made a sequel over the course of the next 2 hours. So Shopkeeper kind of turned into my baby, where I got to get really weird and expressive with it. Then you've got War Zombies and the Golden Legend. Again, that was pretty much Groovy's baby. It can be seen as the rock that the rest of Warshooter grounded itself on. It's a series that's always had a pretty similar energy to that first Death Battle video, so throughout Warshooter history, the War Zombies series has always been a good reminder of what it's all about, or at least where it all started. Around this point, while we were doing the very early script writing for Construction Heroes 2 versus Enemy Portals, was when we wanted to start fleshing out the lore of Warshooter a bit more. We came up with all of these different employee characters. The Admiral, the Second Admiral, 50 Cursed, Little 25, Blood Typer, Hellblazer 22, Magnum Sex, and a few others. There was a bit of drama that we invented between Scout and Warshooter, so in time for Heroes 2's release, he split up from Warshooter and started his own film company, A24. A24! I even made a video of Scout getting drunk in the park explaining the controversy. The whole reason, and I'm going off script here for a moment, that we decided to introduce this drama between Scout and the Admiral at the original Warshooter company's employee layout is because we were generating voice lines using 15 AI, I think, back in those days. Maybe it was UberDuck. Having thought about it more, I do have some moral qualms with AI-generated voices. I would fucking hate for somebody to do that to me. But at the time, we just went for it. And it was GLaDOS voice lines anyway, so they were meant to sound computerized, so it sounded fine, even if it is a little bit less than perfectly ethical, in my opinion. But anyways, 15AI was down for like a year at a time, so we had to just invent this drama to explain the delays. And so this is when the ARG side of things really came in. It really started with Construction Heroes 2, which was still in early pre-production at the time. See, in the first Construction Heroes movie, Heavy canonically died. He was shot by this sniper on his way out of Ravenholm. We decided pretty early on that we wanted to have Heavy's ghost in Construction Heroes 2 in some way, and so our friend Breadcrumb Guy decided to stand around in the background and in the observation rooms while we recorded our footage. While in the long process of writing and generating GLaDOS lines and editing, Groovy randomly sent me a video he made and asked me to upload it to the channel. This one is so important to the story that I'm just going to play the whole thing here. Don't worry, it's only like a minute long. All your heads look bloody 12 feet tall. So, yeah, this is where it all began. Basically, in the lore that Groovy had created with this video and that we expanded on together later, Heavy had some sort of big plan for the Construction Heroes, and so when he was killed in the first movie, his determination to help the heroes enabled his soul to reside in this world, and he became the embodiment of technology by moving his soul into Aperture Science. This caused a bug in GLaDOS' programming that caused her to try and kill the Construction Heroes in the second movie, and when they took her down at the end, Heavy was able to use the computers in Aperture Science to spread his influence and take over all technology. Basically, anything with electricity running through it was Heavy. You can actually see Heavy taking over in the credits of Construction Heroes 2. During this phase, Heavy even forced his way into one of my videos on the main channel. This URL on Franklin's phone in my GTA 5 video, one of my most popular videos, leads to All Your Bloody Heads Look 12 Feet Tall. This is where the ARG really began. So, over the course of this ARG, the participants had to collect 5 eternal inflations. It's just a suitably ominous term referring to the endless expansion of the universe, a relevant theme for the 4th movie. Mind you, the 3rd wasn't even out yet. It started out simple, just get this one ragdoll off of this scaffolding in Half-Life 2. Then, the players had to find all of Heavy's appearances in Construction Heroes 2. Then they had to cook a real-life pizza and submit it to the Technology Discord server, then find a couple of specific locations on TF2 maps from vague screenshots. There were lore reasons behind all of these things. Basically, Heavy needed them to be accomplished in order to create a computer simulation of Los Santos as a final test for the Construction Heroes, and to achieve all of the other things necessary for the plot of Construction Heroes 3 to happen. So this was all really good foreshadowing, actually. I think Warshooter kind of made me a better storyteller at moments like this. Construction Heroes 3 is really vague and abstract at times, so the idea was that the people who participated in this ARG would be better equipped to understand the plot of the movie, and the significance of various things like the pizza that Heavy uses to enter the Hall of Heroes. God, this sounds insane. A perfect example of how we used these expectations and then subverted them would be Los Santos itself, the setting of the 3rd movie. If you were paying super close attention during the ARG, you would know that the Los Santos we see in Heroes 3 is a computer simulation. So when Heavy sacrifices himself at the end of the movie to turn Los Santos into the real-life city of Los Angeles, hopefully it blows your mind. Jesus Christ, I can't believe I'm talking about this on the main channel. I never thought this day would come. I never wanted it to, but a couple weeks ago, Groovy just convinced me, and here we are. And I gotta say, I'm glad. Anyways, the larger benefit to this ARG was that a handful of people got to spend some real time with the Heavy, learning how best to communicate with his ethereal form, and getting first-hand experience with his benevolent but temperamental disposition that we wrote for him. The people who were standing in their real-life kitchens making real-life pizza to give to their digital, fictional friend are the ones who were hit the absolute hardest by the ending of Heroes 3, when Heavy finally allows himself to pass on into the afterlife. If it weren't for this ARG, nobody would have even cared about the ending. It probably wouldn't have even stuck around long enough to get there. But I was there in the VC when we premiered this video. People were genuinely affected by Heavy's death. I heard tears. It's embarrassing, but it's kind of one of the highlights of my entire career as a creative. I think a lot of the time, especially in the latter half of War Shooter, Groovy and I had this goal of making people get genuinely invested and at times emotional over something that was so incredibly stupid. Like, if you thought about the fact that you were actually feeling things watching this, that feeling was part of the joke in and of itself. But we did earnestly try to make it emotional. I was at a point in my life where I really didn't feel like I was able to express myself much. I had just come out as trans on YouTube, and it felt like I was walking on eggshells with my community, trying to keep it as an open secret. I knew that in the long run I would lose a lot of subscribers, so I had to resort to just drip-feeding little slices of my queerness to the community, so that the bigots would leave one at a time rather than 1,000 at a time. This, combined with the emotional awakening that was just getting on estrogen, made me lean into the emotional side of War Shooter a lot more as we got closer to its ending. But let's get away from all of this emotional stuff and talk about the last hurrah for the truly stupid side of War Shooter. We'll rewind a bit to back when we had lore, but weren't really trying to say anything with the project. That time that Groovy and I wrote a fucking War Shooter book. The Life and Times of Master Fort Fighter. See, I can't believe this. At the time, War Shooter was being run by this completely evil, malevolent character called the Admiral. Well, he was the second Admiral, but that's not important. Second in command was a lovable and friendly character that Groovy created and voiced, 50 Curse. He's kind of become a fan favorite for the few fans that we do have. The Admiral just wasn't fun, though. We had this huge list of all of these genuinely horrible things that he did, and the tone of the War Shooter Twitter account was just mean-spirited and combative. And again, just not fun. So we needed to kill the Admiral off. Rather than just make a video saying that the Admiral went crazy and got himself killed, probably similarly to Sergeant Ripper in Dr. Strangelove, me and Groovy are completely insane, so we decided that the best way to get rid of the Admiral was to write a book, then have a character introduced named Hellblazer22 coerce the canonical author of the book, Bloodtyper, to convince the Admiral to create a space program for War Shooter so that he could fly to the moon and play the role of Master Fort Fighter in a trailer for the book, so that Hellblazer22 could then sabotage the Admiral's rocket and leave him marooned amongst the cosmos. Even outside of the lore surrounding the book's creation, the book itself is almost completely incomprehensible, although it does technically have a story. It ends with this little note from the author about how War Shooter has finally rid itself of the evil Admiral, and how 50 Curse can now take over and steer the company in a brighter direction. A lot of people in my life have accused me of self-sabotage, a passive form of self-harm where I intentionally make bad decisions in order to set myself up for failure. Personally, I've never lent much credence to such theories. The reasons that I do the things that I do are complex and innumerable. However, looking back on how Groovy and I handled War Shooter, I'm forced to ask myself if we were intentionally setting ourselves up for failure. Time and time again, from the very beginning of War Shooter to its ending, we did absolutely everything in our power to make sure that there was a consistent story and that everything made sense if you thought about it for long enough. Then we made sure that literally nobody would have the patience, dedication, focus, or just idiotic tolerance to ever decipher the story, as heavily obfuscated as it was. Why? Well, the self-sabotage angle is certainly a possibility, but I think it was more a matter of being hyper-protective of this thing that I got to share with Groovy. It was a weird trial of egos to see my main channel, this thing that I continually pour all my darkest thoughts and feelings into, be reduced to fodder for memes and shitposting by certain younger members of my community. Part of me thinks that the sheer impenetrability of Warshooter was a means of keeping it as just Groovy and I's thing. Part of me didn't want the people watching these videos to get the joke, because I guess I feared that would ruin the joke. At the end of it all, I wouldn't change a thing about how we did Warshooter. Maybe someday, down the rabbit hole, we'll do a video on me and internet sleuths will finally piece all of this together and it'll be the craziest thing that anyone's ever seen, but I don't really mind if Warshooter is never understood. The time I got to spend with it was absolutely magical, and it's going to be a lifelong memory that I'm always going to cherish. We wrapped up Heroes 4 as an ode to friendship and optimism through tragic times, something that I think both of us were able to relate to at the time, and we were in the home stretch. If we go all the way back to May 18th, 2021, we can find a trailer for a Warshooter game called Warriors on Ice. At the end of our characteristically long and annoying credits, for a trailer, we can see this phrase: "Good versus evil is where ends will fate meet intertwine." Right around here would be when we figured out how we wanted the Warshooter story to end. Good versus evil. Now that we had finally finished Construction Heroes 4, all that we had to do before we created Good vs. Evil and ended Warshooter once and for all was to create Death Battle 3. Then we could execute our master plan and wrap up this 4-year-long story in the dumbest way possible. See, we always knew that we were going to have to do another Death Battle before we ended Warshooter. The first Death Battle, like all of Warshooter, had become a massively important symbol of Groovy and I's friendship. So we got together on an empty Mercenary Park server yet again, challenged someone that Warshooter had started some dumb, jokey Twitter beef with to duel us, and we created Death Battle 3 specifically as an ode to all the fun times that we'd had working together on the series. If you don't mind me telling an embarrassing story, this was right around the time that I first started getting really flirty with the girl who's now my partner, the girl who got me the scattergun because I voiced Scout in Warshooter. Long story short, the beginning of Death Battle 3 includes the text, "God, I'm gonna have so much fun with you," as a reference to all the good times that I'd had with Groovy over the years. Sure. Let's just say that I sent Charlotte the same message moments before I put that in the video. I can't fucking believe I'm saying this out loud right now. Anyways, point is, while this might look like just another fever dream shitpost typical of the Warshooter brand, if you watch Death Battle 3 through me or Groovy's eyes, it's a little difficult to not get emotional. There's never been a man in my life who could guide me from an awful panic attack to dumb laughter and fun faster or more easily than Groovy can. This video is an ode to all the times that Groovy pulled me from the edge. I'll never stop being thankful for him for all he's done for me, and this video is a part of that thanks. There were a couple random videos that we did out of boredom that weren't part of the plan, as our original concepts for Good vs. Evil required a lot of planning and scripting that eventually got scrapped and replaced for something simpler. But the only thing that we had left to do was to create Good vs. Evil and execute our plan for the ending. Unfortunately, as pretty and sweet as those last couple paragraphs were, talking about Good vs. Evil is going to require me to get more into some Warshooter lore. See, on the 15th of May, 2021, about 2 years before any of this happened, Groovy retweeted this video of a man being absolutely destroyed by green paint at some wrestling event. In the tweet, he called it the Green Weapon and said that Warshooter would start studying this technology. Over the next 2.5 years, Warshooter was canonically developing the Green Weapon in the background, although we didn't talk about it much at the time. So, in the final days before we uploaded Good vs. Evil, we put a bunch of effort into foreshadowing that something went wrong with the Green Weapon in Warshooter's offices. Basically, some of the Green Weapon spilled onto a hard drive containing all of Warshooter's files, and the green weapon started generating millions of game trailers per second until eventually reality broke down and the Warshooter employees themselves were sucked into the video games. That's why both of the trailers shown in Good vs. Evil's beginning are so completely incomprehensible and uncanny feeling, even by Warshooter standards. Then we cut to an abstract image of Warrior and Vanguard, the two protagonists of Death Battle, representations of myself and Groovy, fighting off the green weapon until they have to surrender. At which point, they find themselves in a void, exchanging stares with 15 bright lights. Each one of these lights represents an individual who helped in real life with the Warshooter ARG. 2 of them belong to Groovy and I. The construction heroes step out next to Warrior and Vanguard, so we have 2 pairs of protagonists, 2 different stories, each representing Groovy and I's friendship, and every one of them disappears into the void. The idea here was that the green weapon represented the joke getting old. It generated a billion game trailers until eventually none of what we had spent the last 4 years building meant anything to anyone. It used our characters we created for these trailers and took the soul out of them, even if they didn't have much soul to begin with. For years, Groovy and I had been talking about our fear that someday we would look back and not find any of this stuff funny anymore, and Good vs. Evil and the green weapon were our way of ending the story of Warshooter before it ever got to that point. The protagonists of all of Warshooter's games disappeared, and so did the fictional employees that we created to run the company. All of that lore was wiped out. None of it ever happened. And in knowing that their entire lives were nothing but dreams in the heads of 2 bored Gmod enthusiasts, Bloodtyper, Magnum Sex, Hellblazer 22, the Admirals, Scout, and all of our other characters ceased to exist, and Warshooter ended. 50 Curse didn't really understand what happened in Good vs. Evil, though, so he's fine. Canonically, he's still out there grilling cheeseburgers for his son, Little 25. And that's it. Warshooter was over. We had one thing left to do to tie a bow around this whole joke. Groovy and I quickly slapped together 7 other videos over the course of a couple hours. Remove Scout, Soldier, Pyro, Engineer, Demo Man, Sniper, and Spy from Team Fortress 2. Over the following day, we released each one of these videos at hourly intervals, alongside Remove Heavy from TF2, which was just every single piece of Warshooter and A24 content sped up so fast as to make hours of footage go by in 3.5 minutes. We had finally finished the most insane project that we'd ever committed ourselves to. Remove Heavy from Team Fortress 2, a joke that took 4 years and hundreds upon hundreds of hours of work and planning, and that video has exactly 4 comments on this day. Damn, we really need to remove Heavy from Team Fortress 2. This brainwash is lit, yo. I feel the urge to invest in Samsung. Yeah, sure. Nobody was ever going to get this joke of ours, and that's okay. It was the most fun that I've ever had with the internet. A week or 2 later, it was Groovy's last night at home before he went off to college. Ultimately, things didn't line up like we had hoped, so rather than a big party with all of his friends, at the end of the night, it was just him and I, sitting in a VC, like always, reminiscing on this thing that we shared a mutual love for. It was exactly like that afternoon that began our friendship, all alone, there for each other, watching the trailer for Half-Life Alyx, only this time, we were looking back on half a decade of the good times that we'd shared together. And that's the story of the time that I dedicated 1/8 of my life to a shitpost. So before I do the patron read and close out today's video, I want to make a point of emphasizing something that I didn't really get the chance to talk about much in the video that I wanted to, but I had to cut it out for pacing reasons. This scattergun that I had, Scout's Weapon from TF2. My girlfriend got this for me as a birthday gift. It came several months late. It only arrived like just before I started work on this video. Otherwise, you bet your ass this would be on my set in almost every video. But she got it for me because canonically Groovy played the heavy and all the ARG stuff. He was the one controlling that Discord account. And I'm the one who controlled the Scouts Discord account, so she got me the scattergun. Not really much more to say on that topic. I just wanted to show this thing off. It's really fucking cool. Made on Etsy and all that. I fucking adore it. It's got the lever action and everything. Okay, anyway though. Actual reason I'm here in my car is to go ahead and read off the patrons, especially those who donate $10 or more monthly. The support I've been getting lately has been very, very, very needed financially, and I'm super grateful to everyone who's been helping me out and all the different things that I do. It really means the world to me. We would be struggling a lot worse than we are right now if it weren't for that. And this right here is the reason that we're going to be able to get an apartment, hopefully sooner rather than later. But anyways, the patrons who are donating $10 or more monthly are as follows: Alex, Dashy Dashy, Isa, One-Eyed Willie, Maddie Doman, Dunks Lab, Riley, D, You All Deserve Happiness and Love, y'all are valid, Metamaniac, AL, Shang Bouldergrow, Cheesy Cheese, The Biggest of Men, Miss Lavender, Dizzy Gwen, Bo Ya, Delaney, Toma, DJ Jax, Babylon Broken, The Narcissist Cookbook, Asiobatoon, Spooky Ina, Guybrush, Gwen T, Sylvian Pascal, M. Coy, Voiced Mute, Cappy, George Rosenbaum, Mina, Lake, Eva Knight, Panda, Mr. Cocaco, Shay Theus, Bjorb, Lily Leones, Neris, Sean Hamilton, The Coom Slayer, Nomad Delilah Jester, Haunted Mystic, Charlotte, the one who got me the gun, IW, Arda Aurelia, Atheist, Poof Donut, Femboy Fishing, Joannis, Laura M, Rio, Mia Maple, Vega Nelson, Demise, Nicole, Neurofilter, Ada Avery, Summer Celine Garden at Midnight, Big Time Jim, Darius Fazier, Dennis Foshakamer, Almost Dead Again, Gab, David Kaiser, Erica, and CeeLo. That's all I really have to say for this week. This is going to be a shorter outro read. It shouldn't be too long before I see you all again. Thank you.